This is already a most unusual year in Vermont politics. We will see extraordinary turnover in November. We know at least 6 of Vermont's 8 statewide elected office holders are not seeking re-election. Some trying to move up, others, for different reasons, calling it quits. And that opens up all sorts of opportunities for newcomers. Brenda Siegel this week announcing her 3rd run for statewide office. The Southern Vermont drug policy and housing activist says she'll challenge Republican Governor Phil Scott. So far, she's the only Democrat willing to do so. This morning, our conversation with the candidate. Joining us this morning, Brenda Siegel, the newly minted Democratic candidate for governor of Vermont. Welcome to NBC5 In Depth.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we're happy to have you. So you became the first candidate to enter the race for governor, which is a little unusual this year. Why did you jump in? What are your principal reasons for wanting to be governor?
People across our state are struggling and they need us to do more. I'm looking for government that makes sure that we work on issues like the overdose crisis, like the housing crisis that we have had since long before the pandemic, the climate crisis, and ensuring that we support workers' rights as well. And right now, with the veto of the pension bill, the S-286, that is not supporting our workers in our state or our teachers, who really are the heroes of our time.
You're referring to the governor's veto. He said he knows he's going to be overridden, but said that it doesn't go far enough, that we'll be back in a couple of years, with another problem to fix. Do you think he's incorrect about that?
Yes, well, I think that this was a product of compromise between the unions and legislators on every side of the aisle. This was overwhelmingly supported. And in addition to that, when we're looking at what his chief complaint is, which is that there isn't an optional defined contribution in the bill. Optional defined contribution has plenty of data out there that shows you that it actually will cost both our state and the employees more now and in the long run. And then in the long run as well, for the employees, as they retire, they will be getting less of a return on investment. And so this really isn't good for our pension system, for our state, or for the workers in our state.
All right, let me ask you a couple of basics. Though this is your 3rd run at statewide office after a run for governor in 2018 and for lieutenant governor in 2020. Maybe the 3rd time is the charm, but tell us a little bit about yourself to folks who don't know much about you. You're 45, you're from Newfane in Windham County. What else should we know?
I have been working on drug policy and housing advocacy throughout the last several years, working with legislators, alongside legislators to move policy, and also on the ground and with states' attorneys on drug policy. In addition, I have a son. I'm a single mom, who I'm very proud of, who is right now attending UVM, and I'm a long-time community leader, and I work within the community in Brattleboro, where I grew up, on different events to try to help grow our local economy.
Do you think you're the first Democrat to get into the race for governor? Do you think you'll be the only one?
I don't know what other people's decision making is right now. I think that that people are awaiting what the governor decides. We have people who need us to fight for them now, regardless of the governor's decision.
You got a lot of attention for camping out, sleeping outdoors on the steps of the State House to protest the governor's position on motel vouchers during the cold weather months. Was that worth it? Or was that some evidence, I guess, of your commitment to this issue?
It was 100% worth it. It was not easy. It was one of the hardest experiences of my life and my advocacy. And it was really the only tool we had left. At that time, there was a federal full reimbursement, there still is, 100% reimbursement for people using the GA Motel program that houses people that are experiencing homelessness. However, the governor had exited many of them, 2,000 around, in July of 2021. Those folks were still on the street and camping in the woods right behind his office. And we wanted to make sure that they did not freeze to death this winter. So as a result of our actions, which many believe we could not win, but we did, as a result of those actions, people did not freeze to death this winter.
You think we need more low and middle income housing in our state? I guess probably no one would disagree with that. Should we reform Act 250 to help speed things along?
I think there has to be some reforms to Act 250, yes, so that we can make sure that we have a more robust city center, especially. And also in communities like mine, there has to be some option for us to build in our downtowns as well, because those are very small communities. I also do believe, though, that we need to fully staff the Act 250 office to make sure that those permits are going through, because that's one of the problems that is little known and little talked about in that area as well. So I think that that's extremely important.
You're running on an anti-poverty platform, champion of labor, of public schools. Would you raise taxes as governor?
When we look at our tax system, what we need to do is ensure that what we do puts more money in Vermonters' pockets and helps the long-term investment of our state. I do believe in progressive tax structure, but part of the reason I believe in that is not just because the wealthy need to pay their fair share. Let's be honest, the majority of our state is made up of low and moderate income people. So those are not the folks that we're talking about who might need to pay more. However, the majority of people need support getting more money in their pockets. And so whatever policy we do come up with needs to do that. In addition, we need to change the way that we fund education in our state to an income-based structure, because an income-based funding structure, only 25% of our public schools are paid for through property tax. And it would be a huge burden lifted from property owners and make property ownership more possible for so many if we move to a progressive tax structure that was income-based rather than property-based.
Do we need more people to move to this state to help shoulder the burden?
We definitely need more people to move to the state. And in order to do that, we don't have enough housing for the people that live in this state right now. I mean, even upper middle income families, when we were on the steps, we met an upper middle income single mom who had been no cause evicted from her house in Burlington, and she was having an impossible time getting back into the rental market, had lived at friends in her car with her children. This is someone with an upper middle income who could not get back into the rental market. And so when you think about that and try to consider what it must be like for low or moderate income people or people experiencing homelessness to get to the top of a housing list, you can begin to imagine how impossible that road is.
Let me ask you about the governor's polling numbers, because it seems to have discouraged a lot of Democrats from challenging him. He earned almost 70% of the vote last time against a well-funded incumbent lieutenant governor. He seems to get a lot of support, maybe even most of his support, from Democrats and independents. So where's your lane here? How do you chip away at that?
Well, one thing is that people really need to understand how the policies that have been impacted are impacting regular people. And right now, Vermonters are worrying about their bottom line. They're worrying about how their kids, whether or not their kids are going to stay in school, whether or not they're going to get COVID. They're worrying about where they can find a job that actually meets their needs. And so they don't necessarily know that some of the policies that have been not supported or vetoed have harmed maybe their bottom lines and also their neighbors as much as they have. So that's one thing that I think we can talk about. Another thing is that we haven't ever had a candidacy that is really talking about policy in the way that I think needs to be discussed. And so right now, what I think is really important is that the governor has positioned himself in phase 2/3 and 4 of COVID, and not really left behind the most vulnerable people. We said we were not going to leave them behind, but they have been left behind. They cannot attend events because of the masking policies. They cannot be supported in their schools. And so we are looking at a lot of parents, teachers, state employees, working people who right now are really frustrated with those policies. So while that's the polling, I really love what Ayanna Pressley always said, which is don't follow the polar coaster.
Brenda Siegel, a drug policy and housing advocate, the first in the race for governor, running for the Democratic nomination. Good luck to you. Thank you for being with us here this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
You'll recall Governor Scott left little doubt during his appearance on this program last month that he will seek a fourth term this fall. With a legislature that likes to spend freely, he said, there needs to, quote, be an adult in the room. At his news conference this week, however, he said he will not announce his plans until the end of the legislative session, which is expected to be sometime next week.